We will review now. Repetition data category. Inside repetition data, we will find a repetition description and total number. We mentioned before in the distribution data that we can enter the number of rebars we have. So for example, I can say it's 5 by 10. So we find that when I set it to 5, it becomes 5 by 10. And it reflects in my label, and we see that it also reflects in the BBS. If we refresh the page here, you'll notice that I now have 5 rebars displayed. Each one of these rebars has a diameter of 10, and the total number of rebars I have is simply 5. And consequently, this affects the weight of the BBS I have. What is the benefit of this repetition data? Its function is that, for example, if I have a beam and I want to start counting all the numbers for the rebars in that beam or in that column, then in that case, if we work with this scenario I have here, I set the quantity of this rebar to 2. What will happen in the BBS is that now I have 2, each with a quantity of 5, so 2 times 5 equals 10. So now I have a total of 10 rebars of this specific type in my collection. As a result, my calculated weight for these rebars will be much more accurate and reliable. So that's essentially main purpose of repetition data. Of course, this information also appears in the label, but we go ahead and display this information in the label from show repetition count. So we find that it tells me 2 times 5 equals 10. And we also find that this information appears in the BBS table I have. Of course, if I change this number, we'll also see that inside the BBS, 3 times 5 becomes 15. And we also find that it appears the same way in the label. The second thing we have here is the repetition description. So for example, if I had set this rebar is repeated inside 3 beams, so I'll say, for example, 3 beams, for instance. So now it's taken the repetition and also the description, and this information is now displayed in the label. Here in visibility data, we'll find show repetition description. If I set it to yes, it will then tell me that you have, for example, 3 beams of this, such as 5 equals 10, and this number or count of the repetition, along with the repetition description, now appears in my label. Similarly, in the BBS, I can also display the repetition. Also, inside visibility data of BBSS, we'll find show repetition description. We'll set it to yes. At that point, we'll find that it says 3 beams here. So at that point, when I say 3 beams, 5, 10, which means 3 times 5 equals 15, that's my count. Multiply single mass and you'll get the total mass of the rebar. And with that, we now know our repetition data. And of course, the last property is the one that specifically gives me the number, which is the number multiplied by the repetition count in the total number. So this number is calculated by multiplying the repetition count by the number of